G'day Bomber fans. Now I've been asked a lot about the contract status of certain players in recent trade videos, so today I'm going to go all out. It is a mega contract update today. I'm going to talk about every out of contract Essendon Bomber and talk about what we know about them and their place at the club. It's going to be a longer video today because we still have so many Essendon players yet to re-sign. Now we don't know the tea with every single player. There's still plenty that we don't know about, so a lot of this is just speculation on my part, but for the guys we actually have news on, I'm going to discuss them all first, so let's get into it. Starting with Jye Caldwell. Now he's become a bit of a fan favorite, well, actually a lot of a fan favorite. He's genuinely one of our best performing players in 2024, second in the Everything Essendon votes. It's got us acting early, putting forward a contract. Cal Toomey about a month ago said discussions were all but done, with duration just being the only little sticking point. Well, according to Theo Dropoulos, that duration will be 4 years and an announcement of a contract extension is imminent. This is being recorded on a Wednesday. I wouldn't be surprised if it's already announced by the time this video is out, whenever that is. This is set to be our next contract extension. It'll take him through free agency, and looking back on this trade, what a steal. I remember some were critical because we had to overpay for him initially. Some reports said $550,000 a year when we signed him back in 2020, but that looks like a no-brainer now, especially considering clubs like St Kilda were coming hard for him. Caldwell actually barracked for the Saints going up and chose to come and play with us instead, so a great trade. Great news that he'll be staying in the red and black. Harry Jones. Now he signed a one-year deal last season. According to John Ralph, that deal included a games played clause, which if he met would trigger him for a second year, and apparently he is set to meet the games played trigger. This was news back in April, so I reckon he would have already hit the threshold by now because he's played pretty much every game he was available this year, bar the Sydney match, I think, from memory. So Jones will be in the red and black for at least one more year. Don't know what the sticking point is with the announcement, possibly the club waiting to see if they want to offer him multiple years, because from the looks of things, his extension as a part of this current contract would only be 1 year. We will see though, but Jones will play with us in 2025 at least, it seems. Matt Guelfi, he last signed a deal back in 2022, a 2-year deal. This was after his podium finish in the Crichton, I believe. A bit rough to finish third in the best and fairest and only get a 2-year contract. He wasn't a cemented member of the team in 2023, but this year he's proven a valuable asset to our forward line. Fox Footy reported late in May that discussions on a new deal for Guelfi were imminent, so based on that report you would assume they have already begun. This would mean he is one of the players in this video that if signed would be announced sooner rather than later, and when deals are struck mid-year, it 99% of the time means it's a multi-year deal. 1-year contract negotiations usually come after the season as the club looks to finalise the list and give those players warning deals. Based on history, I reckon a 2-year deal is the way to go. He's a native West Aussie, so I wouldn't be surprised if one of those clubs have asked a little question or two to his management, but I reckon he stays put. Jake Stringer, there is no rush to sign him. He's an older player in our team, not too many good seasons left in him, you'd think, so he won't be getting a massive deal. If he isn't on a 1-year contract from here, he will be after his new one ends. There are many jokes about him performing due to his contract status, playing good footy to get that new deal with a bit of extra money thanks to recency bias, but I doubt he's going to be getting much more than he currently earns. If anything, you would think his earnings would be dropping steadily from this point on. Cal Toomey says a deal could actually come at the end of the year. Some seem to think that if that is the case, clubs could try and pry him away. I doubt he moves. He loves Essendon and we'll be offering him a deal. It's just about how long that deal is. It would be 1 or 2 years. 3 would really shock me. Dyson Heppell is fresh off game 250, which a few years ago was looking very unlikely with his bung foot and poor form. He's rejuvenated his career though. He's looking really solid and it's got many talking about 2025 already. Heppell himself has said that if he had to make a decision now, it would be a yes to playing, that is. But he also stated that there is lots of footy still left to go in the year, still quite a few months until the end of the season. So the early signs are that we could see Heppell get a 1-year deal, but he is going to wait until after the season ends to decide. The good news is he's really enjoying himself and his footy right now. There's absolutely no pressure on our former captain to make a decision, which hasn't been the case for a while. Nik Hind is in good form right now. He's had a pretty impressive 2024 season, but he is still being made to wait until the end of the year for a new contract, according to those in the media. Not surprising given his age and history being in and out of the team. He isn't exactly a solidified best 22 player, but Hind is no certainty to earn a new deal. I would say he is likely to get a 1-year contract based on form, but when you're made to wait, it usually means there are other priorities, so we'll see what happens with Hind after the season. I get the feeling we see him with a small contract for 2025 though. It's 1-year deals from this point on. He is also definitely a player who still needs to perform closing out the year though. He's not safe. If he was to be dropped from the team in the later rounds, it could definitely impact the club's decision. That's just the case with older players. A similar thing happened with Tom Cutler a few years back. He started the year well, dropped in form later, and the club gave him the boot. So he is definitely not safe despite being a pretty handy player in our side right now, I reckon. Nik Cox is another who is set to sign a new deal. He is set to sign a 2-year deal soon. Talks have been agreed upon according to Cal Toomey. He will sign on until the end of 2026, which would be his last contract before free agency. He's become a mainstay in the team since getting his body right. He's playing on that wing, sometimes in defence. He's been playing decent footy as well. He's still very young as well for a player of his stature. He's not properly grown into his body yet. Very lanky still, some somehow. So the best is yet to come. A 2-year deal is coming up for Cox, which is good. Dylan Shiel, now he still does have another year left on his contract. Cal Toomey, Riley Beveridge, Mark McGowan, everybody is saying so. He must have triggered a 1-year extension on his 6-year deal at some stage without us knowing. If you look online, you'll see him listed as out of contract on those sites, but everyone in the media is saying he's out of contract at the end of 2025, so that's what I'm going to believe. He's not listed as a free agent either, which he would be if he was out of contract. He was fantastic against Collingwood in his first proper game of the year. It had many doubting whether or not we want him moved on or not. I still think he probably tries to seek out a trade. He can't be happy with the amount of game time he's played this year, but a trade would have to be agreed upon considering he is still contracted until 2025. Todd Goldstein, one of the oldest players in the comp, he signed a 1-year deal with us last year to join from North Melbourne. He said earlier in the year that he had no plans for retirement. He's just kind of winging it, seeing how he feels. He's not going to be doing anything before the season ends unless he is announcing his retirement. That is a possibility. He's an older player. He can't go on forever. Hard to know what he's going to do, though. It's still a long way to go in the year. It's either retirement or a 1-year deal. The club will probably want him to stay after what's happened with Draper being absent more often than not. Jaiden Hunter, I think, unfortunately for our key forward, he will not be offered a new deal. It's unfortunate, but it's tight for list spots. Every year you see 6 or 7 or 8 players delisted, and realistically, there's going to be some unlucky players, and Hunter, simply put, has not been able to get on the park since coming across. His knees are a serious issue. He joined us mid-season last year on a 6-month contract, signed an extension, and got injured straight after. He's played 2 VFL games since joining. I think with Caddy coming through, the need for that young key forward is decreasing as well, so Hunter will probably be amongst the first few players to be announced as delisted at the end of the year. Another one who I expect to be delisted quite early is Tex Wanganeen, and now he has reinvented himself across the halfback flank in recent weeks, which is great, but he would need to seriously lift if he wants to convince coaches he's good enough to stay. He signed with us in 2022, played a handful of AFL games, but since those matches he has had maybe 2 or 3 standout matches in the VFL. He's lagging behind a bit, and unfortunately he's not a kid anymore. He's turning 21. List spots are too tight to be offering guys like Wanganeen and Hunter 1-year deals. The club is much more likely to use their list spots on up-and-coming draftees. Sam Weideman, again, I just think his days are numbered. I'm not trying to be rude or anything when talking about these guys. I'm just being honest. Weideman was promising early when he came across as that forward, but he lost his spot in the forward line late last year and was shifted to defence. I've liked him down back in the VFL. He's very solid, but he's yet to play an AFL game in the back line, though. He's 27 years old. We have Lewis Hayes coming through, who I'll talk about in a bit. Kaine Baldwin is another who I'll discuss. I think Weideman is solid and would fill a role in the AFL if needed, but I don't know if it's worth keeping a 27-year-old on your list for that reason if he hasn't played a game in almost a year. So I think Weideman's delisted. I wouldn't be surprised if this one comes after the trade period, though, just because there could be some interest in some of our players, and we might wait to see what happens with them because it might give us a free list spot or 2. I guess it's a good time to talk about Kaine Baldwin. This is a really interesting one for me. We signed him on a 1-year deal last year, and I say this a lot on the channel, but 1-year contracts are a warning for players. If you sign a 1-year deal and go gameless the following year, you're more likely than not to be delisted. Even if you are injured for most of it, a 1-year deal is a club saying will give you another chance to prove yourself as a real player, especially if you're as young as Baldwin is. And unfortunately, Baldwin so far hasn't been able to prove himself. Now, he does have the end of the year to prove his worth, convince coaches he can stay. I reckon he could be very unlucky at the end of the year. Many were frustrated when Voss was delisted last year. Baldwin is the guy I reckon we could see follow in his footsteps in 2024. It's definitely not safe, despite being a bit of a fan favourite. It's either he's lucky and gets a 1-year deal, or unlucky and is delisted. Remember, there's always the possibility of picking him up again in the rookie draft as well. Jake Kelly, this is a guy we probably see signed up at the end of the year. With that always comes the possibility of a Tom Cutler repeat, as I said before, but Scott clearly loves Kelly and the roles he plays. He's a bit of a whipping boy. He's not popular amongst the fans, but he is tough. He's hard at it. He's not eating up a huge chunk of the salary cap. I reckon he probably stays signed on. He's played every game he was available for this year. I reckon it's a 1 or 2 year deal. Seeing Kelly delisted would really surprise me after the amount of praise he's gotten internally in this last year or 2. Will Setterfield, this one has legs, I reckon. He's been dropped from the AFL side. His body's let him down since coming over, but now form has as well. It's really interesting because this was looking like a really solid pickup until recently. You get the feeling he has to play AFL footy again to end the year. That has to be the benchmark. If he doesn't, if he ends the year in the VFL, I reckon there's certainly room for a delisting, but I doubt that happens. I reckon he finds his way back into the team, probably for a shorter deal. Jye Menzie, now this is a tough one to judge. I think he's probably done enough to warrant a new 1-year deal. He isn't as concrete in the best 22 as last year when he played 21 of 23 games. In 2024, he's played 9 of a possible 16. He's lost his place in his favoured small forward position, playing as a makeshift wing and halfback flanker in the AFL, which so far hasn't worked. project. I think what happens here depends on what happens with our other small forwards, to be honest. If we manage to get a big fish in the trade period, Menzie could definitely find himself on the outer. Same with NGA rules. If the AFL allow NGA rules to be loosened and we have access to Isaac Kako, Menzie would find himself on the outer even more. So I reckon the club will wait until we have a bit more clarity regarding those situations. I doubt they're thinking too much about Menzie's contract right now. Jayden Davey, again, similar to Menzie, I think the club needs a bit more clarity regarding NGA restrictions and trade news. Davey hasn't really shown too much in the VFL. He's had only the 1 year to prove himself as a player, but he hasn't done a lot yet. He'd be very unlucky to be delisted after just 1 year of footy. Looking at our list, though, we have about 5 or 6 small forwards that are so weak in that area, so you get the feeling the club could be a bit ruthless in culling them if they're able to get Ainsworth or Kako instead. I don't see us bringing in small forwards without getting rid of some, and Davey is the only one on our list yet to play a game or really get close to playing one. I see the club making a decision here after the trade period when we know more about our 2025 list. They won't be signing small forwards to new deals before knowing whether or not they can improve on said small forward area. If he does sign, it'll only be a 1 year deal though. Lewis Hayes, I think he's in a safer position than the guys I just mentioned. He's a key position player. They always take longer to develop and longer to find themselves in the senior side. I doubt the club get rid of Weideman, Baldwin and Hayes, and of the three, I think Hayes is the one we've not only seen the most of this year, but seen the best of lately. He's yet to play AFL, so it won't be a long deal. It could see it being 1 or 2, probably more likely to be 1, but I would say he's one of the guys we see sign on after the season ends. Vigo Visentini. Now, rookies are never safe. Being a rookie in AFL is tough. On one side, you're playing the sport you love. The other, you're earning less and have no real security. Visentini is a project player. It's a risk pickup. We take him, we see what he's like, and either keep him or let him go. Think of Anthony Mankara last year. We signed him and delisted him within 12 months. The same could definitely happen here, but I think Visentini has shown enough to get a new deal. Again, this is one that will be sorted out later in the year. Same goes for Saad El-Hawli. Being a mid-season pickup is even harder than being a rookie. You're essentially a rookie that the club is only picking up because of an injury to another player. Now, in the past, we have stuck with mid-season pickups. We have never delisted one in their first year, which is good news for Saad. Even Hunter last year, who was injured for all but 2 games, still got a new deal. And Saad should come back to play footy before the year is up, which will help his case. But like with Hunter last year, this is one that will play out after the trade period ends, just in case a better option comes around. That is that. Cheers for sticking around for the longer video. Hope I didn't bore you too much. Make sure you like it if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and as always, go Bombers.